What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you. So, another one that came out on the 24th of April was Katatonia's new album, City Burials. This came out on Peaceville Records. This band has been around for a while and gone through many different phases in their sound. Been around since 1991, in fact, from Stockholm, Sweden. And, of course, features two prominent members that have also been in Bloodbath, which fucking rules.
Yep.
This is the band's 12th full-length, and their first one since going on hiatus back in 2018. But they managed to return with all the same members from the last album.
Which never happens.
I
can't think of any band where they've come back from a hiatus and been like, oh, we have the same members and here we go.
And everyone still likes each other.
So we just dive right into it. The record starts off with the song Heart Set to Divide. It's Katatonia.
It's Katatonia.
What can I say? Beautiful vocal harmonies and such. The ambience that just continues throughout the record.
I have to say, on this album, Jonas is in incredible form. Jonas, I'm sorry if I'm fucking up your name, man. I think he does an excellent job on this entire album. In fact, I think this is one of his best vocal performances as far as Katatonia goes. Now, it starts off very, almost kind of Pink Floyd-ish, except like a dark, depressing Pink Floyd. And dark and depressing is just pretty much the theme of Katatonia in general. There's not a lot of upbeat moments. But when it gets into the main riff, unfortunately, it doesn't really gel particularly well. The opening section had this kind of nice little cool strum section, which was very Pink Floyd-y. And then when the main riff comes in, it's almost kind of gent-ish.
I mean, first of all, it was a very long intro.
Yeah.
Probably a good minute and a half or so. I don't know about gent. It
didn't fit.
You run across a lot of that in this album. Unfortunately, that was something we came across. What I found is that a lot of the riffs either A, didn't fit completely, or B, fit to the point where you'd think the song would go on longer and progress on the kind of level of the build they were on, but the songs are too short for that.
One I thought distinctly kind of had that issue was Neon Epitaph. I thought this was actually very similar to stuff that was on Fall of Hearts, which is one of my favorite albums by them. It has that kind of same feel. It's a little bit more guitar-driven, which I think this is a more vocally-driven album, or at least synth-driven. The guitars are kind of secondary in the mix. You don't get as many big riffy moments.
Although Neon Epitaph was a bit
that
heavier.
It felt like it was building towards something bigger. And
it did have at least a hook.
Yeah, it did. It did a solid hook.
Yep.
But, again, it felt like it could have been longer. Like, the last part of it, I actually thought, was like, oh, this is just going to be a nice little segue into the next movement. And no, that was the end of the song.
Yep.
And a lot of the songs kind of end very empty. They don't really transition well into the next song, which over the course of their albums, they've done really well in terms of building into the next track.
And that's one of my complaints, too, is that there's nothing, in my opinion, to even separate kind of verse-chorus in these things, because none of the parts gel together, even going from the verse into what might be considered the chorus. That chorus doesn't repeat itself when it comes back around. That's kind of rough.
And sometimes when there is a chorus where it is very distinct, it can be lackluster. The first single they put out, Behind the Blood, very different for them. This was actually, I would say, a very experimental track in a way. It's very riffy. It has kind of an 80s rock vibe. Like, it opens up with a big chuggy riff and squealing, shreddy solos, which isn't necessarily a Katatonia thing. It's more about that depressive mood and all that stuff. And the verses on it, I thought, were particularly catchy. Like, it just kind of has this big 80s anthemic stadium rock kind of feel. But when it comes down to the chorus, it just feels like it just misses the mark.
I'm going to say it. It's kind of butt rockish. Their experimentation on this album, especially leading off the Fall of Hearts, shit, I thought it was going to be more of a heavier kind of progressive thing, kind of almost like the exploration of a heavier Opeth that refuses to be Opeth. I thought maybe that's where we were going. But it's got a butt rock feel. Their experimentation was experimenting with radio-friendly songs on this record.
And that was the biggest leap outside of what they usually do, and it feels like it's just kind of a very normal track. Like, you could hear any litany of bands do a track like this. And granted, I think, like I said, there's a great hook on the verses. The chorus definitely misses the mark, and that's kind of the point that you really want to be drawn in there. Now, two tracks that break outside of the normal on here are Lacquer and Vanishes. These are distinctly electronic tracks. They're very like 80s dark synthwave goth.
Lacquer reminds me of, if you listen to Katatonia's other shit, Off Night is the New Day, the song Idle Hands, but the remix version of that song.
Yeah. Big Depeche Mode vibes, even like some Sisters of Mercy. There's even a point in there where it felt like a far more dark and depressing version of like a Phil Collins song.
Yep.
And oddly enough, these two songs were some of my favorites on here.
They were both mutual favorites of ours out of this whole album.
I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I love all that shit. That's just a huge part of my listening. But those songs were, I don't know, just more dynamic. There was more emotion behind them.
Especially on Vanishers, because there's a female vocalist on there as well.
The harmonies are beautiful.
The harmonies between the two of them are just beautiful. Very perfect circle-ish.
Now, there was another track on here that I did think was pretty interesting just because it's probably the lone up-tempo one. A Winter of Our Passing is kind of just built around a driving up-tempo beat, and it's kind of synth-driven. I really liked this song, and this was one of the first ones that was more of a straightforward Katatonia song that actually had a big chorus. Like, the chorus was actually larger than the verses, at least.
The chorus in the song Flicker also was a really powerful chorus. Still, the song was very straightforward, but the chorus was definitely a lot powerful. You could tell there was a little bit more motivation behind that song.
And that was another thing, was songs definitely, again, could have been longer. You compare this to the length of their last album where it was over an hour. This one is 49 minutes.
Something like that.
And you can definitely tell things seem more condensed, and there are spots where you feel like they could build into another part, and it just doesn't.
They took the safe road.
It does. This feels like a very safe release.
Yep.
Not a bad release, but it really kind of pales in comparison. And unfortunately, there's just kind of this thing where if you release this gigantic, big album, which Fall of Hearts was a really big album. It was well reviewed, and fans seemed to really gobble it up. I fucking loved it. Sometimes when you follow up an album like that, you kind of come out of the gate maybe a little lackluster, and you're trying to possibly beat it. And this one, I didn't even feel like they were trying to beat it. I just feel like they kind of returned back to a little bit of the stuff like they were doing before in the previous albums, before Fall of Hearts. But yeah, overall, this just feels like a safe release. It's not terrible at all. I want to give it 3 stars. I think it's good. It's just, I feel like they pushed themselves harder on the last release, and this one, maybe the drive wasn't there. Plus, coming off the hiatus, maybe they just felt obligated to get in the studio and put out something new. I don't know. I don't know the whole story about them reuniting again. I was shocked to actually hear this.
I was too.
Out.
I thought normally when a band announces an indefinite hiatus, we end up with fucking Textures.
Yeah.
Who are still on indefinite hiatus, so...
But yeah, 3 stars. I think it's a good album. Definitely check it out. I mean, if you like Katatonia, you're going to like this album.
Yeah.
But, it didn't quite do everything for me.
Yep. I'm also going to give it 3. It was very straightforward. Like I said in the very beginning, it's Katatonia. I like Katatonia. To this day, I still jam Great Cold Distance all the time. They're a good band. They're just... I thought maybe coming out of the last album, and especially coming out of hiatus, you'd want to come out with barrels blazing, or at least something to tack on to where you left off to, and this seems kind of like they went backwards. Backwards overall, I think, as songs are concerned. Now, like he said too, as far as the vocals are concerned, it doesn't get a whole lot better than this for this dude. But I made a comparison earlier before we turned the camera on, and I'm going to make it again. His vocals remind me of the way Green Day structured songs in Dookie. And when I say the way Green Day structured songs in Dookie, it's Billy Joe only knew 3 chords, and so they took 3 chords and put them into a bunch of different songs to try and make them all sound different. In the end, because of the limited range that they had, all the songs sounded the same, and in the same token, all his vocals kind of sound the same, which takes away from a lot of the song.
His range is limited, but I think he works well within it. But yeah, his vocals are unmistakable.
Yes.
So, if you like the review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do shit like this all the time. And we're also on Instagram.
Yep, we're on Instagram, and it's cool. Come visit us. Simply just Thralls of Metal, like it is the YouTube channel, all one word, and there will be. We're working on some pretty interesting content to put in. I think we're going to start throwing in some blooper reels because I'm sure you see where edits happen in these videos, and let me tell you, we're all kind of fucked up.
There's some gems in between those edits.
Anyway.
I do all the editing, I know.
Anyway, if you are in a band and would like your album reviewed, shoot me a message and I will get to it in my What's John Jammin collection. Due to the restraints I have on for Corona, sometimes I write a list at work and sometimes I leave it at work and sometimes I can't get back to work for a few days. So, your reviews are coming.
You guys take her easy.
Have a good night.